A lot of news, including a really good update on Mykel Williams, who was working off on the side during the rookie minicamp practice, and he looked like he was getting after it. 35 minutes coming off the torn ACL. Maybe we see Mykel Williams sooner rather than later. Good news for me after rookie minicamp, Taqueria Cancun. Casually, just the best burrito in the world here in San Francisco. So as we unpack this, we can unpack everything that happened over Thursday and Friday at the team facility. You know, Grayson Halton is actually from San Diego. San Francisco and San Diego have a burrito rivalry. This is the OG though, the San Francisco mission style burrito.
I was probably about 6'2", 250.
Trucking some kids in high school.
Oh yeah. Lowering that shoulder. You know, once I get to that sideline, I'm hashes, I'm gone. You know, I was fast. But you know, I can run through the hole, lower my shoulder if I need to, you know, so.
We're still looking for the Gracen Halton wide receiver tape from high school. I believe him, I just need to see it because I think it's gonna be awesome. And now he's over 290 pounds, but the point is that he's extremely athletic. And the 49ers now have a lot of tools in that middle of the defensive line that they did not have last year, which means maybe Mykel Williams can stay out on the edge a little bit more. How they use him once everybody is healthy is going to be so fascinating because I talked about the delineation between the tackles and the ends. You know, Mykel has played both. In sub packages, he's moved inside the defensive tackle. Is that going to continue to be a thing under Raheem Morris, especially since the 49ers have now added a lot of talent at tackle? We haven't seen Osa Odighizuwa yet. He's a veteran, came over in the trade. We will at the end of this month once it comes to OTAs. Remember, torn ACL for Mykel Williams, who's significantly younger than a lot of the rookies that we saw on the field during minicamp. When the 49ers drafted Mykel, he was only 20 years old. 21 now. Somebody like Romelo Height, fellow defensive end, 25. By the way, Romelo Height doesn't look all too light, which is good news for the 49ers. We know that he's only 239 pounds, which had been a point of some concern. I don't even think the 49ers will ask him to add too much more weight because remember, with Raheem Morris, they're going to want to run some more drops from their defensive ends, more 3-4-like action. And we've still yet to see exactly how Raheem is going to architect this defense. I know I wrote the big article up on the San Francisco Standard. Speaking of San Francisco, I'm just going to take a step to the side here. We could see the skyline behind me. This is Bernal Heights. This is the neighborhood of Taqueria Cancun #2, so we wanted to show that to you. But anyway, I talked about Raheem Morris on the Standard, and the 49ers are keeping a lot of the defensive plans close to the vest. I will tell you that at practice, it was interesting to me that the defensive tackles exclusively were working with Chris Kasarik in the first period. It wasn't until the second and the third periods that you saw Romelo Height and the defensive end start to work with Chris, which was a little bit different than in the past. But it could have just been a numbers issue because the 49ers were working on special teams earlier. Let's flip to the other line where we saw the 49ers 2 draftees working, Enrique Cruz Jr. and Carver Willis in tandem. We've talked so much about how fast Enrique is. A little bit more on that in a bit, but Carver Willis, he showed some serious love to the 49ers organization that I think is rooted in the college that he went to, the University of Washington, ironically in Seattle, the home city of the 49ers' biggest rivals. But Jedd Fisch, who is the coach of UW, loves San Francisco.
But as far as like practice tape, yeah. UW, like the Niners can do no wrong at UW. We watch their walkthroughs to learn how to walk through. We watch their practice tape to learn how to practice professionally. Like we learn all that. So truly nothing, like Niners can do no wrong. It's an organization that UW really respects. So we watched it to learn. So yeah, we watched their run game to learn how to run wide zone, tight zone, all that kind of stuff. And then we watched literally the practice tape because our coach needed a good example of how to practice professionally without hurting guys and, you know, being smart. So yeah, no, UW really respects the Niners.
And Carver Willis, you could tell by the way that he talks, it might give you some George Kittle vibes. Turns out that he put his fiance's phone number into the NFL system for the draft because he didn't want to be too bothered over draft weekend. So the 49ers accessed his phone number once they drafted him and sent it out to their players who wanted to congratulate Carver Willis. And well, his fiance's phone got a surprise text message from a very prominent 49er.
Kittle DM'd me, which is pretty sick. And so Brock Purdy actually texted my fiance, which she was like, whoa, you got to respond to this.
Brock Purdy himself. Awesome stuff. Yeah, so here, we're at Bernal Heights right now. You can see why Jed Fish might like San Francisco. Actually, he likes the San Francisco 49ers, but who wouldn't like this view? But if you pan over this way, you can see where Candlestick Park used to be. That hill right there, you can see the spaghetti of the 101, 280 freeway interchange, and then beyond that is the hill that a lot of people believe Jerry Rice used to train on, but that actually wasn't the hill where he trained. That's down in, I think, Emerald Hills. That's the hill, though, that used to be right by Candlestick Park. Right to the left of that hill is where you used to see the Candlestick Stadium lights. A lot of good 49ers offensive football played at Candlestick, and there's a lot of good offensive football being played now with Purdy as their quarterback. Now, speaking of Brock, we're going to take a look down here. Do you guys remember the John Deere commercial that Brock Purdy and Colton McKivitz filmed together? Is actually shot right in front of that gray house at the bottom of the screen. And it turns out that Brock Purdy might have rescued somebody or saved somebody from a coyote. He warned, I think it was a newscaster, that there was a coyote walking around here on Bernal Heights, and because of that, she was out of harm's way. It's an urban legend at this point, but that is a famous spot here in Bernal Heights. Now, speaking of Purdy, speaking of McKivitz, Enrique Cruz Jr., the offensive lineman out of Kansas, played right tackle at Kansas and played right tackle throughout his entire college career, just where Colton McKivitz is at. And we've talked about the 3 tight end sets, 6 offensive linemen sets for the 49ers. Very possible with somebody that's as fast as Enrique Cruz. Developmentally, though, you could see him being the steady right tackle in the future, just given the traits that he has. Carver Willis, talked about it. He said, I don't have the traits of somebody who can be a fixture at the NFL tackle position. Carver Willis talks about himself as a lineman who can play all 5 spots, but probably is going to be more home on the inside. But Enrique Cruz Jr., being the fastest offensive lineman of this NFL draft class, weighing over 300 pounds, fairly long arms as well, he can play tackle. And, one thing that I had to ask him was, what is it like training to run the 40 as fast as he did at his weight? Because we often talk about receivers, we often talk about running backs running, we even talk about Brock Purdy's 10-yard split. We don't talk about what these linemen have to do to carry 300-plus pounds as fast as Enrique Cruz Jr. did. Here's what he had to say.
What's it like to train for the 40 at 300-plus pounds? Is there anything extra that has to go in?
Yeah, you gotta be extra careful, running the 40 at that speed and just running the 40 in general at that weight, it can be kind of dangerous for a 300-pounder. So it's really just extra preparation and care for the joints, for all the ligaments and stuff like that.
It's all tied together. If the 49ers, regardless of how they get the job done, if they can find a way to run more efficiently than they did last year, and maybe that does utilize some of Enrique Cruz Jr. as a 6th offensive lineman, it'll make things much, much easier for Brock Purdy and the pass game. Speaking of that, Mike thinks that Dejon Stribbling looks a little like Terrell Owens when he runs. I think it's the little head dip when he's about to head into his cut. What do you guys think? Do you think that Stribbling resembles Terrell Owens or not? It's all up to you guys to decide. One last shot here from San Francisco. Looking west toward the fog creeping over Twin Peaks. You could see Sutro Tower. You pan up a little bit, right there, just peeking over the top of the fog. That's quintessential San Francisco. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Let's talk to David Lombardi about it. Last seen doing the butterfly in the bay, chasing chonkers. That was some impressive footage there, David. I know you're very familiar with the water. I'm sure you did some competitive swimming in your day. You've been up in Tahoe. But, dude, you were ripping that butterfly through the bay, man. What's up, David? How you doing?
Hey, what's up, David?
Good. How are you? That was an Alcatraz swim. That was cool. We were actually doing a commercial for Fitness SF. And so they had a drone and stuff. It was really neat. And it was a perfect day, and was able to get a nice swim in. You got to time those, right? Otherwise, you're going to end up in the ocean. The current will take you out. So
Right.
You got to time them, and they're really cool because there's some tactics to it, because there's never a still moment in the bay. So you usually have to have like an aiming point, and then you have to calculate like what your speed's going to be, and then you aim, and then you end up like hitting the area of the city, like aquatic park, where you're aiming for, based on like the trajectory and the speed of the current.
Damn, that is really deep stuff. I like it. And so we'll see this on an ad, like social media or TV or what?
It already came out. This was a few months ago. I actually wasn't looking for chonkers in that video. It was just, I was like, oh, this is a good opportunity to share it.
You were having some fun.
Yeah, I was having some fun.
Right,
there were whales the size of school buses during that swim, though. The guy in the boat, John, who was guiding me there through the bay, he was like, oh, I just saw a whale the size of a school bus like 100 yards away. I'm like, I didn't need to hear that right now, but made it to shore. So there's some bigger creatures than chonkers in the bay.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's our transition to the 49ers. Did they draft any big creatures? Well, they drafted a wide receiver who's known to block, and he's a big body, and he's got some speed. And tell us about meeting Dejon Stribbling. The sound bites we played, he sounded like a very serious young man.
Well, his dad was a Marine for 17 years. And it's funny because Romelo Height, the 49ers second pick in this draft, his dad was also in the Marines. And so you got these two guys at the top of the draft, super disciplined work ethics, and they both credit their fathers and the upbringing. And I think that the 49ers have seen drama at the wide receiver position, to say the least, over the course of the past few years. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that they saw Dejon Stribbling and his demeanor, how buttoned up he is, how serious he is, and his work ethic. And I think that's something that really appealed to them. So no nonsense guy. He's from Hawaii, so he's got a little bit of chill as far as the off-field personality goes. But when he steps in between the lines, you could see that, his dad was a Marine for 17 years. And I think that again, really did appeal to the 49ers.
We found out earlier this week that Dejon Stribbling is going to be wearing number 15, which is now available since Jauan Jennings has officially signed with the Minnesota Vikings. David, what were your thoughts on Jauan Jennings, the contract details, and his decision to move on from the 49ers?
I think it's too bad, because I think he out-leveraged himself in 2025. And context is really important. Remember, in 2025, Jennings was entering the second year of a discount deal that he had signed in 2024 before Brandon Ayuk had signed his new contract and before the Brandon Ayuk situation had blown up. Jennings essentially didn't have the resume as far as catches went, because he was the number 3 guy for the 49ers to sign for a really big deal. So he signed for a smaller, more modest deal in 2024. Then Ayuk signed for $30 million a year. Then Ayuk tore his ACL in week 7, and Jennings was essentially the featured guy in 2024. He nearly had 1,000 receiving yards, should have had 1,000 receiving yards, but there was an unfair ejection in that season finale against Arizona. So he entered 2025 saying, hey, my contract for whatever it was, I think it was like $6 million a year, is really outdated. I deserve more money. And he was right. But I think he asked for too much. And I think he asked for over $20 million. And the 49ers were probably willing to split the difference, maybe somewhere around 12 to 15 million. But that wasn't enough for Jennings, and obviously they didn't reach an agreement. And so he out-leveraged himself, and now he signed with the Minnesota Vikings for maybe even less than what the 49ers had offered. I'm not sure exactly what was on the table from the 49ers, but we can talk about ballpark amounts. And obviously the market for Jennings wasn't as big as he thought that it might be. So at a certain point, the 49ers had already moved on, right? They had already signed Mike Evans. They had already signed Christian Kirk. They had drafted Dejon Stribbling. And now Jauan Jennings is with the Minnesota Vikings, and it's too bad. But, it's just one of those situations that didn't work out.
Yeah, it's too bad. And we'll see how he does in Minnesota. And the 49ers welcome Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, and Dejon Stribbling, the son of a Marine. The other big one was your first conversation with Raheem Morris and reading your piece in the SF Standard. There's some, mystery, the mystery man. You note in your piece a couple things. One, they did run the 4-man front the Niners ran, but Jeff Ulbrich, his D coordinator, blitzed a lot more than the Niners do. And Atlanta's secondary played more man than the Niners do. I don't know, what pieces of evidence are you gathering about what Raheem Morris can do with the personnel he's inheriting here in Santa Clara?
I think that they're going to stick in the same kind of base as they've had for the past decade. I think that he essentially verified that yesterday. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have both verified that as well. But what they really want to do is add some flavor to it, add some different packages. So you're not always in a 4-3 running zone defense. So I think they're going to up the man coverage rates. They're probably going to up the blitz rates a little bit. And then they're going to mix up the fronts to the point where, yeah, the 5-man fronts have been big around the league to stop some of these run games. And there's a renaissance happening, I think, when it comes to the run game. So the 5-man fronts also give you some more adaptability with your defensive ends. And you need guys who can drop a little bit more into coverage in those situations. And if you look at Romelo Height, a lot of people are saying, oh, this guy, he's a clone of D Ford and Bryce Huff. I disagree there. I think that he dropped more into coverage in college than either of those two players. So you can't just look at him and say, okay, he's a lighter edge rusher and he's really explosive. He's just like Bryce Huff. Huff actually really struggled with the coverage drops. That's why he didn't work out in Philadelphia when he was working under Vic Fangio. If you go and watch the Romelo Height tape, you put it on, the third or fourth play is a pass breakup. And he did that in college. He didn't do it a whole heck of a lot. I don't think he's going to be asked to do it a whole heck of a lot under Raheem Morris, but it's now going to be part of the 49ers arsenal because it wasn't part of the 49ers arsenal. It was once in a blue moon where that would happen under the Saleh-like defensive coordinators in the 4-3. I think they're going to want to add some 5-man front stuff that's going to involve some drops from these defensive ends like a Romelo Height, and that's probably going to be one of the more significant changes that we see moving forward.
We also heard from Clay Kubiak yesterday talking to the media and said that the 49ers need to do a better job of lightening the workload for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, which leads to the questions about a guy like Kalen Black, who the Niners drafted in the 3rd round this year, but also Jordan James and Isaac Guerrero. How do you think the 49ers are going to go about maybe lightening that workload for Christian McCaffrey?
Well, it's really important that whoever steps in for him when he goes off the field is able to at least credibly deliver on a pass pattern. And I'll give you a great example. The 49ers were driving against Atlanta last year. Late in the game, it was a key touchdown to put actually Raheem Morris's Falcons away. And it was 3rd down, 3rd and long. I think it was 3rd and 11 or 3rd and 12. And Kyle Shanahan dialed up a play that involved Christian McCaffrey splitting out into the slot, running down the hash and catching a skinny post for the first down. But the problem is, when the 49ers were in the huddle and Kyle Shanahan was calling the play, he didn't notice at first that Christian McCaffrey was standing right next to him on the sideline, obviously sucking wind, like he was tired. And Shanahan panicked and said, Christian, you got to get in the game because we're calling this play for you. I don't trust any other running back to run this play. So Christian sprinted onto the field. They made the substitution in time. And he caught the pass, even though he was gassed, even though he was tired. The 49ers picked up the first down, and that helped seal the game against Atlanta. The 49ers would like to avoid situations like that moving forward because I do think they put Christian at a little unnecessary risk, especially if he's tired. So the only way that you can avoid that, though, given how they run this offense, is if that running back can catch the ball moving out of the backfield, or if he can pass protect. He needs to be able to contribute beyond just running the football, and I think they really like that about Kalen Black. He didn't do a lot of pass catching at Indiana, but he did at James Madison, and he was really good running routes to the Senior Bowl, and that's where San Francisco truly fell in love with him. Plus, he might be the best pass protecting back in the class. So I think, to answer your question, you have to look at the pass game. You have to look at the pass game, how these backs perform there, and that's where Kalen Black can set himself apart for the 49ers because they can't just have a running back behind Christian McCaffrey. They need to have a do-everything weapon there.
The other guy who kind of made news, David, we're talking to David Lombardi of the SF Standard, covers the 49ers, was Carver Willis because he had a little personality. Some of you guys compared him to George Kittle in a way. The O-line was one of those places that I think fans thought the Niners should have spent more draft capital. They didn't. That's kind of in keeping with their history, but they got this guy in the 4th round, which for them is a pretty big pick. He talked about playing guard, perhaps, but your review of sort of them not stocking up on O-line, they did take a little later in the 5th, I believe, Enrique Cruz, but your review of that and meeting Willis and maybe where you see his future shaking out with the Niners.
Well, I talked to Greg Cosell the other day about this, and he's probably the best at breaking down this film, and his point was he was really surprised that Enrique Cruz was still around in the 5th round, just given the physical traits. So the guy didn't give up a sack last year at Kansas. It was his first really, really good year starting. So maybe that's why he kind of fell down in the draft process, because teams wanted to see a little bit more consistency. But he figured something out, and I asked him, what he figured out yesterday, and he said that the coaching staff at Kansas, after transferring, really, really got him ready to go at an NFL level. But the thing about these tackles is, and I think Carver Willis made the point yesterday in a self-deprecating fashion. He was talking about himself. He was saying, to be a starting tackle in the NFL, you have to have this elite physical talent, this set of traits that, less than 1% of football players has. You have to be big, you have to be fast and, strong, and it's hard to have all those things in conjunction. And Carver Willis said, I don't have those traits, which is why they're moving me the guard. But I think that I can make it work, and I think that I'm versatile, and, I think I could scrap by, and I think I'm a good player. Enrique Cruz Jr. has those traits. And for whatever reason, he lasted until the 5th round. And this is why I always emphasize so much at this time of the year. It doesn't matter where a guy was picked anymore. These guys are in the building. Their traits are in the building. Their weaknesses are in the building, and you've got to work with them. And the truth of the matter is that the 49ers picked up 2 offensive linemen, one of whom has the physical traits to be a really good tackle. Like, he was the fastest tackle in this draft, the fastest offensive lineman in this draft. He, has a 35-inch vertical leap. He's a freak athlete at a big size in Enrique Cruz Jr. And then you have a guy who was a powerful run blocker, who seems to be really resourceful, who said yesterday that he can play all 5 positions, who believes he can even help the 49ers out at center. And guess what? Jake Brendel's 34, entering the final year of his contract, and maybe that's the center succession plan. So they brought in two players they really like, and now we'll see where they go with them.
David, last one is, are you keeping your notifications on or your ear to the ground? Joey Bosa, any chance? What do you think?
I think the 49ers have been interested all offseason. I know they were interested last offseason. The price limit was much stricter because they were beginning a big renovation of the defensive line, and they wanted to make sure that there was enough room for rookies. Now they're starting to add cherries on top, right? Because they have completely reconstructed the room. Speaking of Bosa, Nick Bosa is the only remnant of the 2024 rotation, like defensive line room that is projected to be in the rotation this year. So in 14 months, they have completely reconstructed the defensive line outside of Nick Bosa. And now, Joey would be a cherry on top. He's a guy that has played in a 3-4 system before. I think that if you did bring him in, he probably takes the spot of a Sam Mokawanum, who might be able to be traded for a lower round pick. Kyle Van Noy is interested in joining the 49ers as well. He's played in a drop type of system, and he actually kind of spilled the beans the other day when he said that he knows the 49ers really, really love Joey Bosa. I don't think that it's really been that much of a secret. Even John Lynch didn't deny that the 49ers are interested when we asked him about him, Joey, a couple months ago, but he said that he thinks that Joey is too expensive for the 49ers. So we'll see if the prices align, and if they do, then maybe we will see Nick and Joey Bosa on the same team.
It is May 8th. There's some time before summer camps, and the negotiating dance will be playing out. So good stuff, David. A lot of 49er hay in the barn there. By the way, do you guys get to see them on the field at all this weekend, or do they ban you guys?
No, I'm headed out there in 2 hours. We'll be out on the field.
Great.
So
well, the eyeball test is good. I'll be looking forward to your eyeball review because you see things when guys are on the field. So some guys pop. So good. And I'll look forward to that. All right, man. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Have a great weekend.
Yeah.